Good afternoon. I am Z. Scott, President of Chicago State University. I am delighted to welcome you to Chicago State University's campus today. First, I would like to thank Governor Pritzker for his commitment to ensuring equitable outcomes for all Illinois residents with today's signing of HB 3653. This moment is possible thanks to the to fulfilling and family-sustaining careers. We thank each of you and our legislative leaders for your steadfast and unwavering commitment to this university. That includes fully funding capital projects that will ensure the health and safety of our campus, providing a world-class healthcare simulation lab for our students in the health professions, and providing grant funding through DCEO to complete our campus child care center. Again, we welcome Governor Pritzker and members of the Illinois General Assembly and each of you to Chicago State University, and we stand ready to serve as partners in the work to come. With this, I will introduce you to our governor, Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and a big thank you to President Z. Scott and to Chicago State for hosting us here on this very, very special occasion. Against Domestic Violence and the People's Lobby. About 400 days ago, at the beginning of 2020, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton and I outlined 3 criminal justice priorities for our administration: transforming the pretrial detention system so that low-income people aren't thrown behind bars while only the wealthy walk free, diverting low-level drug crimes into substance treatment programs, and reducing excessive stays in prison. This criminal justice package advances all of those goals and more, and accomplishes the goal of making Illinoisans safer. Today, thanks to the hard work of so many here and those watching at home, we advance our values in the law. Progress secured despite the pandemic because of the passion and the push of the Legislative Black Caucus, activists, advocates, and residents intent on leaving a better Illinois for all of our children. Opponents of this law don't want any change, don't believe there is injustice in the system, and are preying upon fear of change to lie and fearmonger in defense of the status quo. But let me say this to the people of this great state: all Illinoisans will live in a safer and more just state with this law on the books. The speakers who are following me today will speak to that truth as well. In short, this legislation marks a substantial step toward dismantling the systemic racism that plagues our communities, our state, and our nation, and brings us closer to true safety, true fairness, and true justice. My administration infuses these values into all that we do. That's why we've expunged 500,000 low-level cannabis arrest records, pardoned over 20,000 more, awarded tens of millions of dollars to lift up communities harmed by the war on drugs, and brought our state's prison population down by about 25% since the beginning of this pandemic. While there is more work to do, justice is being advanced once again today, and we are bringing about a more perfect union and the more of the blessings of liberty for all. And with that, I am very proud to turn it over to my partner in governance and someone who stands as an inspiration to advance the cause of justice, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
Good afternoon. First, to Governor Pritzker, every day I am so grateful to stand with you and work in partnership with you as you lead the great state of Illinois. Thank you for keeping your word and working to repair the harm done by the criminal justice system, especially to Black and brown communities. Thank you, President Z. Scott and the entire Chicago State University family for the warm welcome and for hosting us today. I am so proud of my friends and former colleagues of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, Attorney General Raul, and all of the other elected officials joining us today who have already been acknowledged. As Black elected officials, some may forget that the systemic racism and discrimination that we fight against on a daily basis is not simply because we've heard about it from our constituents or other third-party sources. It is because we and our loved ones have experienced it, lived it, been traumatized by it, excluded by it. So I have a tremendous amount of gratitude for the Black Caucus, who has taken this lived experience and made it purposeful, using their seats of power to effectuate change that will alter the trajectory of lives, families, and entire communities for generations to come. I want to especially acknowledge Senators L.G. Sims and Robert Peters, Representative Justin Slaughter, and Leader Kimberly Lightford, who have listened to the voices of Illinoisans throughout our state and brought leadership and courage and compassion for the communities they serve and for all Illinoisans to the forefront. But we all know that they could not have done this alone. Thank you to the advocates and leaders from communities throughout Illinois, some of whom are here today, who have been pushing and organizing and challenging and educating for years, decades even, to get us to this moment. You never wavered. Well done. As you know, it's February, and we're celebrating Black History Month. Black history is about monumental moments and movements that serve as catalysts for change. Today is both. I've come to realize that one of the best ways to celebrate Black history is by doing everything that we can to protect Black futures. And House Bill 3653 aims to do just that. You see, the history makers that we celebrate this month did not become Black history makers by standing on the sidelines or by protecting the status quo. They didn't become Black history makers by giving more weight to the voices of their critics than they did the voices of their communities. The fact of the matter is that most people who say, wait for justice, have never been on the receiving end of injustice. Because if you've been on the receiving end of injustice, or your community historically finds itself experiencing injustice, then you become well aware of what Dr. King meant when he spoke of the fierce urgency of now. Justice cannot wait. And I love the words of Fannie Lou Hamer, who said it best when she said, "We are sick and tired of being sick and tired." It's past time to begin repairing the disproportionate harm that's been done to Black communities by the criminal justice system that for far too many has brought anything but justice. It's time to look at criminal justice policy through an equity lens and tell the truth about how systemic racism has caused Black people to have disproportionate contact with policing, jails, and prisons rather than with entrepreneurship, post-secondary education, and economic opportunities. As the governor said, we have heard from communities who have told us that they are over-policed and under-resourced. They've told us about being in a constant state of trauma, yet living in communities with little to no access to mental health resources. They told us about the accessibility of drugs and guns, but the flagrant inaccessibility of jobs and opportunity. And yes, they told us of the desire to have what every Illinoisan desires and deserves, to live in a safe and healthy community. We absolutely must protect public safety. And to be clear, that is the priority of this administration. But we must stop criminalizing being poor. Justice simply cannot wait, and I look forward to working alongside Governor Pritzker, the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, members of law enforcement, and community stakeholders to ensure that the letter and spirit of House Bill 3653 is brought to life. The time has come. Now, it's my honor to bring forth another Black history maker who has been courageously pushing for justice and equity for her entire career, Leader Kimberly Lightford.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, for the introduction and for your fearless work. I am so honored to be here today to witness God's given vision to me that led to this historic legislation to be signed into law by our governor. It's a moment I know I will never forget. Thank you to the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus family for believing in me as we worked vigorously as a team, especially the Pillar co-chairs, Senator Sims and Representative Slaughter. It's a moment that in many ways has been years in the making, but can also be traced directly back to last spring, when hundreds of thousands of people flooded the streets across the country in big cities and small towns to protest the murder of George Floyd. The inequities in our country had already been exposed for months as the COVID pandemic raged, disproportionately killing Black and brown Americans. But in the wake of George Floyd's murder, something else happened altogether. Those 8 minutes and 46 seconds caused a national awakening, shining the brightest of spotlights on the invisible sin of systemic racism that is embedded in our systems of government and in our laws. I remember joining a protest this past June and witnessing something I had never experienced before. There were far more people demanding that Black Lives Matter than those who looked like me. That's when I knew this moment was different. And leading the Black Caucus at that time, I knew that as a caucus, we had to seize this moment together. So that is when the Black Caucus went to work. We committed ourselves to a 4-day Zoom retreat back in July, where we brought in policy experts on systemic racism to help us dive into roots and the causes and to help us shape a blueprint of what we could do as policymakers to drive change for Black people, to have an opportunity, just a simple opportunity to reach our fullest potential, and of course, to rid Illinois of this sinful, invisible act of racism. We left that retreat with 4 pillars that would define our work moving forward: criminal justice reform, violence reduction, and police accountability, education and workforce development, economic access, equity and opportunity, and healthcare and human services. We also left united as a caucus in ways that we've never been before, united in the belief that we could change the course of history. With those pillars in place, we held 32 subject matter hearings in full collaboration with our colleagues on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers. Also with law enforcement, state agency, and advocacy groups. Over 120 hours of expert testimony gathered and used in the following weeks and months to create legislation that it eventually introduced in January session. Thank you to all of our colleagues who had courage to stand up for justice for all and voted in favor of this legislation, who put their trust and faith in us, knowing it was the right thing to do for our state and for all future generations who will consider Illinois their home. The tragedies of this last year could have just beaten us down, left us hopeless and defeated, but we did not let it. We leveraged it to create real change, to create a better future for our children and our grandchildren. This moment is a hopeful moment, and I am so proud and grateful to be a part of it. And of course, thank you, Governor Pritzker, for signing this bill and for believing in our power to make change. And on behalf of our constituents and our communities, we are so grateful. And now, I'd like to turn it over to another sister who's been in the fight for justice for a very long time, our Illinois House of Representatives President Pro Tem, Representative Jihan Gordon Booth.
Good afternoon. My family, like so many families across this state and across this nation, has experienced victimization of crime and the victimization of a system that often renders justice unequally. First and foremost, in everything that I do, in my responsibility as a legislator, I'm a mother first. I am also a person who believes deeply, deeply in both our personal responsibilities to one another and the possibility of redemption. And what I know is that this criminal justice system hasn't done the job of keeping us safe. That is the most important job of the criminal justice system, and that is to keep us safe, and it has not done that. It's prevented far too many people from getting the supports that they need from all walks of life, from having the ability to securing a job, to securing housing and getting the necessary mental health supports that are so critically important to build back their lives better. It is my deepest hope that this legislation, in part of a constellation of reforms that we are enacting in our state, will ensure that we are making Illinois stronger and safer and more prosperous for all Illinoisans. I am so proud to stand here today in support of this legislation, of this historic legislation, with Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, Attorney General Raoul, Senator Sims, Senator Peters, Majority Leader Lightford, Representative Slaughter, as well as Representative Harper. We could not do this without the support of our brothers and sisters in the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus. We thank you for your steadfast commitment to the issues of justice and equity. We also thank our colleagues, again, as Leader Lightford stated, for standing with us and doing what was right on behalf of all Illinoisans across the This particular piece of policy will ensure that Illinois is safer and fairer for all. With that stated, I want to bring to the dais none other than House Chairwoman Sonia Harper.
Thank you and good afternoon. House Bill 3653. This is a great start in helping to reverse the negative effects of mass incarceration in America. Those effects which have played out mostly in detriment to Black communities and Black families everywhere. This new law, with its set of measures, will help us to start to give true second chances to people who have already paid their debt to society, protects our officers and survivors of crime, and make sure we are being fair to all people, no matter their financial background or zip code. It is about time that we abolish the cash bail system, which favors those with money over those who don't have it. This restores economic access in families and communities who suffer from high rates of violence and crime, and thus deal with over-policing, unnecessary traffic stops and fines, and other infringements upon their freedom. This measure helps mothers and others sleep at night, those who end up bearing the brunt of an unjust system that takes away their men and their money, leaving incomplete households and unprotected communities. Our new measure gives hope to a new generation that things can get better when we collaborate and we actually have the political will as individuals to come together despite our differences and say enough is enough. I would like to thank the members of the Legislative Black Caucus for having the vision as well as the grit to pass these historic omnibus bills that get to the root causes of our community's most pressing problems. A very special thanks to our Senator L.G. Sims, Representative Justin Slaughter, and House Chairman Senator Robert Peters. I'd like to thank the governor for keeping his word in supporting Black communities across the state by signing this measure into law today, followed by our other two pillars in the very near future. As well, I would like to thank our coalition of advocates, residents, subject matter experts, so many of you who have brought us to this day today, but who know we still have much more work to do together. And I'd like to thank our colleagues in the Illinois General Assembly who also supported these measures, had faith in us, and supported us when we told them what we needed for our communities in order to drive a dent in systemic racism in Illinois. To my communities, to our residents and constituents across the state who are looking and searching for answers as it relates to reducing violence of all forms and increasing opportunities for those most at risk for becoming victims or actors. We are not done. This is just the beginning of a new powerful caucus who is standing up and who now will do whatever it takes to repair and grow our communities by all means necessary. Thank you so much. At this time, I would love to bring up Senator L.G. Sims.
Thank you, Chairwoman Harper. It is my distinct honor and privilege to welcome you here to the 17th District. Let me also acknowledge my two partners, Representatives Smith and Evans, as we welcome you to another great day here in the 17th District. First, let me thank President Scott and the entire Chicago State University family for their tremendous hospitality and your making the accommodations very welcoming here for us today. But I've also got to make a few other thank yous, so please bear with me. I've got to thank the amazing First Lady of the 17th District who's joined us here today, my wife, Siobhan Sims, who puts up with the tireless calls and the countless late meetings, who's been my strongest supporter, is my partner and best friend. But I've also got to thank my partners in progress, Representatives Slaughter and Peters. Without their support and advocacy and us coming together on countless calls and meetings, this would not have happened. But I've also got to thank Senate President Don Harmon, who stood up and stood with us as we made sure that we were able to create a more safe and just Illinois. To the entire Legislative Black Caucus. We have talked about the caucus and the work that's been done, but the support of the vision, the advocacy for our communities, and never losing sight of the goal. And it cannot be understated, the leadership of our immediate past Joint Caucus Chairwoman, Majority Leader Kimberly A. Lyford, for having the vision to stand up in a moment of opportunity, but a moment of challenge, and challenging us to be better. And our new Joint Caucus Chairwoman, Representative Sonia Harper, who continues to push the caucus to greater heights. But I have also got to thank an individual in this room who, without them, House Bill 3653 simply would not have happened. Ashley Jenkins Jordan. I'm going to try and not get emotional about you, Ashley. Ashley worked tirelessly for this effort, including returning from her honeymoon and going immediately to work to make this possible. That is dedication. That is the unsung dedication, the dedication that you don't often see from staff. So we owe you a debt of gratitude. The people of Illinois owe you a debt of gratitude, and we thank you. My entire district office team, Sharon, Earl, Chelsea, Ken, AJ, Krista, for fielding the calls, scheduling meetings, and always making sure we do what's best for the people of the 17th District. Attorney General Kwame Raoul, my partner in this and so many other reform efforts. My former roommate, the incomparable Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. And of course, our governor, J.B. Pritzker, for being committed to progress, for being committed to addressing the challenges facing ordinary Illinoisans, and your willingness to put the gubernatorial pen where your mouth is. But I would be remiss if I did not thank the countless advocates who lifted up their voices to get us to this moment. I especially want to thank the community leaders who are watching here today. Know that we appreciate your advocacy, your service to communities across this state. I appreciate you for pushing for these reforms, which will become law here today. You know, the enormity of this moment is not lost on me, and it should not be lost on any of us. And the fact that this moment is happening during Black History Month is nothing short of amazing. This morning, I woke up thinking of the gravity of this moment and acknowledging the giants on whose shoulders we stand. I woke up thinking of one giant in particular, Adelbert Roberts, the first Black member of the Illinois Senate, the first Black person to chair a committee in the Illinois Senate, the Senate's Criminal Procedure Committee. I know Senator Roberts who Attorney General happens to be a man of Alpha Phi Alpha. I know he's looking down at this moment with a great deal of pride at the amount of work and the progress that we've made and the progress that he envisioned so long ago. But I also thought about the environment which existed 100 years ago when Governor Frank Lauder created the Chicago Commission on Race. And unfortunately, in the year 2021 of our Lord, we are still talking about and dealing with many of the same challenges Illinois faced in 1919, a global pandemic, racial strife, and civil unrest. But by signing House Bill 3653 into law, the Safety Act, Illinois is making greater strides than ever before, and communities, as we continue to focus on reform. It focuses on the safety of our communities, accountability for law enforcement, fairness and equity in our criminal justice system. And communities are demanding that that happens today. They're demanding that we have transparency. They're demanding that we modernize our thinking. They recognize we have tried the failed tough on crime policies of the past, which have not made us more safe. They recognize that you can support good officers and want reform at the same time. They are not deterred by those Trumpian strategies to deflect, deny, and defame as a way to stall progress. By fear-mongering and politicizing public safety, by taking a bill aimed at making it harder for a law enforcement officer to shoot a fleeing suspect in the back, or basing pretrial detention decisions not on the size of someone's bank account, but on their threat to public safety or their failure to appear in court, and somehow twisting it into an anti-law enforcement bill to protect criminals. The reality is that a majority of Illinoisans want real reform in the criminal justice system. They want law enforcement officers held accountable for violating someone's rights. Illinois citizens want all of their neighbors to have the same access to safety and justice. Now I know change can be difficult, but history will judge how we responded in this moment, which called for big, bold, transformative changes. This is not a moment for incrementalism, but one which calls for us to reimagine what public safety looks like in this great state. This is not a moment to succumb to mis- and disinformation campaigns. If we were to allow these false narratives to drive our policies or give credence to the false claims that these changes are happening too fast, nothing would ever change. Not only do we owe it to past Illinoisans, but also to future generations who will look back on how we responded to this tremendous opportunity to bring equity and safety and justice to all Illinoisans. The Safety Act is not just about who we are as Illinoisans, but who we strive to be. I want to leave you with some words from the late, great Congressman John Lewis. When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to do something. By signing House Bill 3653, the Safety Act, we are doing something. We are creating a better, more safe, accountable, fair, and equitable Illinois for all, for today, tomorrow, and the future. Thank you, and I will bring to the stage Representative Justin Slaughter.
Good afternoon. I am State Rep Justin Slaughter of the 27th District, representing the far south side of Chicago and the southwest Cook County suburbs, House sponsor of HB 3653. President Z, thank you so much for hosting us today. I first want to start off just by commending and thanking Governor Pritzker and my former suite mate, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, for their steadfast commitment to criminal justice reform. Governor, this is not your first CJR bill that you're signing. I have a good feeling that this won't be your last. We are proud of your efforts and grateful for your dedication to eradicate systemic racism in the state of Illinois. Thank you, Mr. Governor. It's only fitting that we sign this bill in Black History Month. It's our history that gives us the inspiration to do this work. When you think of the sacrifices that Black America has been through, whether it's Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad, Dred Scott, or Jim Crow laws, the Civil Rights Movement, the war on drugs, the Rodney King riots, all the way to our present-day prison industrial complex. It's our legacy of sacrifices, our legacy of resilience and perseverance that give us the strength, the resolve, and the determination to continue fighting for change. I think we know what time it is. Some of you may not. Leader Leifer, what time is it?
Protest to progress. From protest to progress.
It is time that we go from protest to progress. We are going from protest to progress. We are going from protesting, coming together collectively for one cause, to signing a bill. We are going from protest to bringing fairness and equity to a criminal justice system that is rooted in racism. Make no mistake about it, this movement is about you, the people. You are the reason that we took this movement to the next level. When you think about last summer, what was going on locally and nationally, there was a call for action, a call for change. We were reminded that this is a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Today, the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus answers the call. We answer the call with the most comprehensive criminal justice reform bill in the country. And yes, you've heard me say it before, we can march together, we can protest together, but we also can and will impact policy together. You can be involved in the legislative process. When we look at the race disparities in our system and the disproportionate impact on the black community, it was imperative that we put forth a bold and transformative initiative. What did we do? On policing, where so many blacks are victims of police brutality and misconduct, we put forth a 7-point framework, a 7-component framework that addresses crisis intervention, use of force, transparency, accountability, oversight and enforcement, detainment, and officer wellness. On mass incarceration in a state where blacks make up 14% of the population, but routinely 50 to 60% of our prison population. With this bill, we take aim at our overly punitive sentencing policies. We provide more judicial discretion for mandatory minimums. We offer alternatives to custody. And of course, and we're going to be saying it over and over again, we end our unfair cash bail system, a system that relies on one's financial ability or inability to post bond, but will emerge with something that is more comprehensive, that truly looks at if the individual is a threat to the community or a concern that he or she will not appear for their hearing. The SAFETY Act also has a host of prison reforms, most notably modernizing our sentencing credit program and ending prison gerrymandering. These reforms needed to happen. Criminal justice reform cannot wait. The fierce urgency of now is ever so fitting. Like Senator Sims, hard to not get choked up when we talk about the staff. Ashley Jenkins is in the room. I want to give a big shout out to James Hartman, Aluchi Ifebi. Tireless effort, literally tireless effort, nonstop. She answered my call on her honeymoon. We certainly want to recognize all of our colleagues that voted for this bill that are not part of the Black Caucus. We appreciate you. We love you. Thank you for understanding that Black lives do matter. And to the advocates and the activists, this is for you. As legislators, we're honored, privileged to work alongside of you. You are the real, true heroes. And to the Black community, oh yeah, it's a new day, a new chapter. The healing starts now. 400 years of slavery did not break us. It only made us stronger. We picked up, together we picked up the bloodstained banner, and now it's forward march with criminal justice reform. Power concedes nothing without a demand. Together, we are done asking, requesting, begging. Together, this is our demand. Together, we will rise. Together, we will go from protest to progress. Thank you so very much. God bless you. It gives me the honor to introduce my colleague, Chairman of the Senate Public Safety Committee, Senate Chair of the Black Caucus. I'm impressed with his tenacity, his passion. He's done this work for a really long time before becoming a state senator. He has picked up where he left off. His sleeves stay rolled up, ready to do the work. State Senator Robert Peters.
What an introduction. I'm State Senator Robert Peters of the 13th District. Let me first say this is personal for me. I was forced into adoption due to the war on drugs and my biological mother's addiction. I grew up with an adopted father who was a civil rights lawyer and argued in the Supreme Court against police misconduct. In 2016, as an organizer, alongside then State Rep Christian Mitchell, who's now Deputy Governor, with the People's Lobby, I joined a group of organizations to form the End Money Bond Coalition. I want to thank the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus, Senator Sims, Representative Slaughter, and the Governor. This is a historic achievement. This is a testament to a coalition, and this is a testament to organizing. To Ashley Jenkins and Erica Tremble and all the staff who put up with me, thank you. And most importantly, to all the organizers, advocates, and community members who are watching this. We did this. You did this. The status quo isn't working. It just isn't. We're ending a system of cash bond that stands at the intersection of race, class, and gender. Cash bond says if you are poor, then you get a lower tier of safety. If you are poor and black, you get an even lower tier of safety. If you're poor, black, and a woman, you get an even lower tier of public safety. Wealth-based detention will be gone in Illinois by 2023. This bill is a comprehensive improvement on the status quo. We've improved victim services, crime survivor trauma support services, use of force standards, and police accountability. We know that safety isn't the Jason Van Dykes roaming our streets. Safety isn't knowing what 8 minutes and 46 seconds means. Safety isn't knowing what say her name means. Safety would mean George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Laquan McDonald, Rekia Boyd, and sadly, so many more would be with us today. Whether you live in Jacksonville, Illinois, or Chicago, Illinois, real safety and justice for all means a good public school in your neighborhood, a roof over our heads. It's our family and friends, especially on a birthday and a holiday. If you ever talk to anybody and you ask them, what's the safest time in their life? They tell you. It's that special moment. I will always remember when I was a kid and I was struggling to get by. I was at my public school. I was deaf. I had a speech impediment. It was a teacher and a vice principal who took me to the side and calmed me down. That was a safe moment. That was support. It's community, big and small. No matter the zip code, when it comes to our safety, all of that is the bare minimum. We are a beautiful state with beautiful people, and we have made history. We have made a historical step from Black Lives Matter yard signs to legislative action, and we must keep it up. We are in the midst of 3 crises: a public health crisis, an economic crisis, and a crisis with systemic racism, particularly in law enforcement. These crises don't tell us anything new, but they highlight long-standing failures. You heard it earlier. Frederick Douglass said, "Power concedes nothing without a demand." That statement isn't just a blank statement in history. He gave that speech after the abolition of slavery in the Caribbean. In order to create change, you have to make demands. You have to make bold demands. It's also important to remember in history that during the 1960s, Dr. King, the Dr. King we all know, polled at 17%. Because when you demand change, sometimes it's not the most popular, but it's definitely the most right. FDR came in during the crisis of the Great Depression and said there's nothing to fear but fear itself. And so right now, as we fight to bring public safety to every corner of the state, no matter what your zip code is, there's a lot of fear-mongering out there. But if we act out of fear, we will make things worse. We will deepen the crisis of public safety. With the signing of this bill, we start on a historic path towards safety for all, and not just a few. And I believe we can defeat fear. Today isn't the end, but the beginning of the fight to make every community in Illinois whole. Thank you, everybody. Next up is Attorney General, my predecessor, my friend, Kwame Raoul.
Well, good afternoon. Is it still afternoon? Senator Sims, I just want to make sure you all clarify your notes. He made reference and had my name close to Alpha Phi Alpha. I want to make clear you all know that I'm a distinguished member of Kappa Alpha Psi, not Alpha Phi Alpha. So, very important point. President Scott, in fact, it's wonderful to be back here on the yard, as we say. I was not a student here, but I was initiated into Kappa Alpha Psi at a chapter on this very campus, and so this is a welcoming home for me. And Senator Sims and Senator Peters and Representative Slaughter, Representative Slaughter was once my district director, and Senator Peters, my 13th district is in good hands. They all mentioned Ashley's name, and there are 2 Ashleys I want to lift up. First is Ashley Wright on my staff, who convened a number of meetings to work on police certification. She was formerly on House Republican staff years ago when she and Ashley Jenkins lifted up then Representative Sims and I as we worked on law enforcement reform back then. I can't say enough. It's been said about Ashley Jenkins. We get to step up to the mic, but it's the hard workers behind the scenes. I received a call at 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that to work on this legislation on components that I had not sort of introduced, but was proud to do so, and this is a good piece of work, collective work. Governor, thank you. It's important to note that the governor's office and the governor and the governor's office is not just here at the end signing a bill of work that was done working up to this point, but they engaged in meetings that I convened with law enforcement leaders, representatives from all 4 caucuses, and other representatives over the course of several months since July. I want to make clear, because different things have been said about the involvement of law enforcement to this process, and I want to actually lift up law enforcement and lift up my law enforcement partners from the Chiefs of Police Association, the Sheriff's Association, the State's Attorneys Association, State Police Director Brendan Kelly, and the Illinois Law Enforcement Training Standards Board, who participated in a number of meetings since July to develop language around police certification. We also received constructive input from the Illinois FOP, Police Benevolent Protective Association, and Metropolitan Association of Police. And I want to state very clearly that I remain committed to working with law enforcement partners, legislators, the governor's office, and advocates on any cleanup language to address any oversight or unintended consequences. And I've made that commitment known to all parties. The past year, where we have spent a lot of time in isolation, and for myself in a couple of periods of quarantine, it has offered the opportunity for our country and our state to participate in self-reflection. Incidents, including but not limited to the murder of George Floyd, caught on cell phone video, reflected that we could grow out of ignoring systemic tolerance for bad actors in law enforcement. Through protests and otherwise, we bear witness to how this tolerance over time bubbles up to a point where the trust and confidence in law enforcement is undermined. This legislation being signed today does go a long way towards calling an end to such tolerance and begin to put a system of accountability and professionalism forth that can hopefully begin to rebuild the trust in law enforcement in the interest of public safety. There are 3 major components that I'd like to quickly highlight that our office requested from the General Assembly, and that's not to diminish any other components and very important components of the bill. The first is a result of in working with the Representative Jahan Gordon Booth and crime victim advocates to learn how we can improve the services we provide to survivors traumatized by sexual assault, domestic violence, gun violence, and other violent crime. In this bill, we streamline victim compensation process to reduce backlog. We increase the amounts of compensation, and we reduce barriers to accessing compensation. And we look forward to working with the legislature on other elements to help survivors of crime. The second element gives our office explicit state authority to conduct patterns and practice investigations of unconstitutional policing. It should be noted that I led a group of state attorneys general from around the country in asking Speaker Pelosi, Chairman Nadler, and others in Congress to include such language in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And they did, in fact, amend the bill before passing it on to the U.S. Senate, which has not acted on the bill. We continue to ask for this authority at the federal level. And finally, there's the enhancement to police certification. On this, I have to give credit where credit is due. Former State Senator Tim Bivens, a former county sheriff, introduced a bill for police licensing years ago. For years, in conversations with him and former State Senator John Milner, a former police chief, who also supported the concept of statewide professionalism and accountability, we've tried to promote the concept. The provisions in this soon-to-be law moves us towards a system where we are only just hold them accountable when they engage in unacceptable conduct, whether or not they're prosecuted for it. The bill provides prosecutors with access to information they need to disclose in court proceedings to meet their Brady-Giglio requirement. It provides hiring police departments information about officers engaged in misconduct. It helps address the problem of bad cops engaging in hopping from one department to another when they're disciplined at the departmental level. I have many police officers who are close personal friends, who detest the fact that bad cops stain the reputation of hardworking police officers who often take on unimaginable risks as they do their job to promote public safety. The ability of ILETSP to have discretion to decertify takes a major step towards accountability, consistent professionalism, and uplifting the reputation of the many hard-working law enforcement officers who do their job the correct way and put themselves at risk. Collectively, these three provisions, along with the other criminal justice reform provisions, move our state in the right direction. At this point, I have the opportunity to introduce a friend who I've long worked on criminal justice reform with in the Illinois Justice Project, Sharon Mitchell.
I'm really glad I didn't fall down those stairs. Would have been embarrassing. Good afternoon. My name is Sharon Mitchell, Jr., and I'm the director of the Illinois Justice Project. It's good to be with you all without having to unmute. I speak to you today on behalf of a set of organizers and service providers, members of the faith community, advocates, and concerned neighbors that come from all across the state. We have, for 5 years, have fought for this day under the banner of the Coalition to End Money Bond and the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice. We've protested, we've rallied, we've told stories, and we've talked to our leaders. From handing out gummy bears on lobby days, to marching to the Capitol, from demanding equal justice for all, to packing and watching courtrooms, thousands of us, from Champaign to Cairo, from Berwyn to Bloomington, from East St. Louis to my home in West Pullman, have fought for this day. So while this is a happy day, it is also bittersweet because I wish we were all here, the thousands who spoke their truth and helped to make this happen. We demanded a world where access to money does not determine whether you are thrown out in jail, where millions of dollars aren't pulled from our families and our communities that can least afford it, that our black and brown mothers and grandmothers and sisters and partners aren't carrying the burden of paying ransoms for their loved ones' freedom in a state that believes in innocence until proven guilty. We push for the review of multiple legal structures that drive people into pretrial incarceration, not because they are a threat to someone's safety or a risk of flight from prosecution, but because that's just the way we've always done it. This is a good day, and we're taking the right steps to remake our legal system informed by a diverse set of voices, from the formerly incarcerated to survivors of harm and domestic violence. This bill will make us safer. It means that if someone is held, it's because a decision was made based upon risks, not because of a guess of what's in their wallet. But we know the work is not done. Our court system has made a commitment, and I thank them, to reverse the addiction we've historically had on using money to make important decisions. And we'll need all of the 2 years of implementation to get this right. But I want to thank the governor, J.B. Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, our legislative champions, Senator L.G. Sims, Representative Justin Slaughter, and the man that was on the fact sheet before I was, Senator Robert Peters, for all your hard work. And I want to thank the entire Black Caucus, led by Representative Sonia Harper, and my fellow Mustang and Fighting Illini, Rep. Cam Buckner, for their leadership. I want to thank the staffers who work behind the scenes and will likely be working for the next two as we prepare for the money bond. Erica Trimble and James Hartman, Olichia Fibe, Wendy, Lisa, my friend Aditi Singh, for the countless hours I spent harassing you about ending money bond. Big thanks to the folks who have championed this issue for years, like Deputy Governor Christian Mitchell, who was the sponsor of the original bill to end cash bond, President Tony Precreckle, who has been talking about these issues since before anyone I know. Simply put, we are grappling with the reality of the reality that those in jail are far more likely to plead guilty and far more likely to serve longer sentences than people who are similarly situated, but they are outside and enjoy pretrial freedom. And it's because of that reality we know that we cannot solve the issues of mass incarceration and wrongful conviction without addressing the problems at the front door of the court system. So I hope we continue to wash out all the bad policy and practices that we've built to punish, but ignored the need to rehabilitate and to provide fairness and justice, and to be careful with the awesome power of incarceration. So a big thanks to my family at ILJP, Paula Wolf, Gary Gatewood, Karina Lopez, Jim Bray, Jeannie Green, Beth Keifel, Shannon Bradford, and Paul Jones, and to the many friends who have left ILJP, including Eric Laudermilk and Quinn Rollins, and to my friends watching on Zoom at the Coalition, we did it. I thank you all for your dedication to end this practice that has left us poor by pulling money out of our communities and left us less safe by defaulting incarceration and making decisions on money. Thank you to the Coalition. Thank you to the network. Thank you to all the people behind me who have worked to make this possible. And now I'd like to introduce Bertha Purnell. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, Attorney General Kwame Raoul, the Legislative Black Caucus, and to all the survivors and advocates who made this day possible. My name is Bertha Purnell.
and I am a crime survivor. I am a member of Crime Survivors for Safety and Justice. I know firsthand the trauma of losing a loved one, and I'm still on that long road to recovery, just like so many others here in Illinois. In 2017, I lost my youngest son, Maurice, to gun violence here in Chicago. That is why it is so important for me, as a survivor, as a mother, to join on this monumental day. For far too long, criminal justice has focused on over-incarceration rather than prevention, rehabilitation, and victim services. This bill changes that focus. It prioritizes rehabilitation and expands access to help most needed to victim services, so people like me can heal. That is why victims from community that has experienced the worst violence support this bill. It speaks to our needs and on the things that are most important to us as survivors. By increasing victim compensation and removing barriers to service, our communities now have the tools to lessen trauma and stop the cycle of violence. With these reforms, our voices have been heard, and we are confident that our communities will be made safer. The pain of my son's loss will never go away, but today, I am filled with hope about the lives that we can save with this law. On behalf of crime survivors across Illinois, I thank you, Governor Pritzker, Attorney General Raoul, the Legislative Black Caucus, and all the elected officials who recognize the urgency in our communities. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And now I call Senator Harmon to the podium.
I didn't think I was on the program, Bertha, but thank you. I am here today simply to celebrate this landmark accomplishment and the tremendous work of the legislators and staff who made it happen. In the Senate, our Majority Leader Kimberly A. Lightford, our sponsors L.G. Sims and Robert Peters, our terrific staff, Ashley Jenkins Jordan, who led that charge. It is a great day to celebrate your signature on this bill, Governor, and honored to be part of it. Are we turning it over to the videos? Okay. I think I am now apparently introducing Chief Davis by video. Is this right? I'm learning along as we go. So here we are.
Thank you, President.
Hello, I'm Mitchell Davis, the police chief for the village of Hazel Crest. I'm coming to you today on behalf of the Chicago Metropolitan Chapter of the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, better known as NOBLE, and our president, Eugene Williams. NOBLE was founded in 1976 with the motto of justice by action and the commitment to be the conscience of law enforcement. These premises are just as necessary now in 2021 as they were in 1976. And it is with these ideals in mind that NOBLE is encouraged and hopeful of the criminal. Reform is not just change. Reform is change for the better. And NOBLE welcomes productive, equitable change in our profession. While as a people, NOBLE remains encouraged by these changes, professionally, there are elements of House Bill 3653 that we feel need to be addressed. It is our belief that many of these issues are the results of unintended consequences. Members of law enforcement are diligently working to generate verbiage to share with legislators on what we believe was the intent in these areas. Knowing the desire and willingness of the authors of this bill to have collaborative input from law enforcement, we believe that technical insight from law enforcement combined with the vision of legislators can ultimately result in a product that will benefit everybody. We believe that the combination of collaboration and funding are the key to ensuring the success of this bill. Noble believes that the document being signed today by Governor Pritzker can be the foundation of a living document that can serve as a model for reforms that result in equitable administration of justice for communities around the country. As Chapter President Williams always reminds us, if not us, who? And if not now, when? It is now my pleasure to introduce the Honorable State's Attorney of Cook County, Kim Fox.
Thank you, Chief Davis, and good afternoon/evening to everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to be with you all today, and I too want to commend the Legislative Black Caucus, Governor Pritzker, and all those who work so diligently on this legislation. James Baldwin once said, if one really wishes to know how justice is administered in a country, one does not question the policemen, the lawyers, the judges, or the protected members of the middle class. One goes to the unprotected, those who precisely need the law's protection the most. It has been abundantly evident by the work that has been done by the advocates and activists over the last several years that culminated with people in our streets last summer in the wake of the death of George Floyd, that our criminal justice system has been in need of serious criminal justice reform. As a law enforcement official, I am here to thank you all for rejecting the false premise that we can either have public safety or criminal justice reform. The reality is you cannot have public safety without criminal justice reform. The reality is the credibility and the legitimacy of our institutions are doubted by those who need it the most, then those who will rely on our services will not come. This bill, addressing bail reform, addressing police accountability, it questions the things that we've done in the past that have not made us safer. I reject, as many of you who have worked so diligently on this work, that the ways of the past made us safer and kept our communities at their healthiest and at their best. The truth is they haven't. And so I congratulate you on the work that has been done on this work, the collaborative work by those in law enforcement, activists, advocates, and legislators to ensure that we have a criminal justice system that is legitimate and credible. And the fear-mongering of the days of past that got us into the situation of criminal justice that we are now trying to dismantle and unwind can no longer be repeated. And so for those who engage in the fear-mongering rhetoric, for those who wish to hold on to a system that hasn't made us safer, for those who wish to ignore the historic and systemic issues of racism in our institutions at the cost of lives, and particularly Black and brown lives, I say to you that this legislation is just the starting point for the continued work that we must do collectively, collaboratively, to ensure that all of our communities are safe and just. And with that, I want to bring on newly elected State's Attorney from Lake County, Eric Reinhardt.
Thank you, State's Attorney Fox. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, for your leadership on this historic legislation. Thank you to the General Assembly for boldly proclaiming that the criminal justice system must do more to protect all people. This bill makes everyone in Illinois safer and our courthouses fair. Good and principled people now have the tools they need to fight systemic discrimination, to bring transparency and accountability to policing, and to ensure that justice is determined by the merit of the matter and not by race, gender, or access to money. Critical to my support for this bill is that these reforms better protect victims from their abusers, because judges are now empowered to end the turnstile that releases those who would use their wealth to evade jail. For this reason, the most preeminent victims advocate groups support this reform. Let me say that again. The most accomplished and passionate advocates for victims in Illinois, like Ms. Purnell, support this bill. We are finally ending the injustice of dangerous people buying their freedom, but we are also codifying what each of us know to be true. No one should be in jail simply because they are poor. Unjustly jailing those who pose no risk to the community creates a ripple effect, perpetuating cycles of poverty and crime. Now, instead of turning questions of liberty and justice into ones of dollars and cents, judges will have to clearly state why they believe someone should be held or released. This transparency will take us inside a judge's reason and is critical in a system that has too long failed to live up to the ideal of justice for all. Thank you, Governor Pritzker, the General Assembly, the Legislative Black Caucus, and all criminal justice reformers for making Illinois safer and our court system fair. It is now my pleasure and honor to introduce Cook County Board President Tony Precreckle.
Good afternoon. This is an historic moment. With the signing of the Criminal Justice Omnibus Bill, Illinois is poised for a brighter future, and equity has won the day. The inequities of our criminal justice system will not go away immediately. That takes time, effort, and courage. I'm pleased to witness the courage on display today and thank Governor Pritzker, Lieutenant Governor Stratton, Attorney General Raoul, all the members of the General Assembly, and the advocates for their good work. For the past decade, I've served as Cook County Board President, and we've worked to reduce our reliance on cash bail in Cook County. And our efforts have shown that it can be done safely and compassionately. This work, coupled with the good work of our state legislature and our advocates and community leaders, have informed this brave and just piece of legislation before us today. Today, we're taking another step toward achieving a more fair and equitable criminal justice system, one that for far too long has protected the wealthy and has too often leaned on punitive practices against people whose only crime is being poor. I often quote Dr. Martin Luther King, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." Of course, the arc doesn't bend of its own volition. It takes hard work by all of us. With this legislation, we've helped to bend the arc. Thank you. Governor Pritzker?
Thank you. Now we're going to sign the bill. Perhaps we can get the bill sponsors. And yeah, you go ahead, Justin. bill sponsors, if the bill sponsors would just join me here, I think we're going to take some questions. You all get a pen. But you got the first one, I get that. Thank you. I'm happy to take any questions from members of the media. Yes. Hi, Marianne.
Of course, there are the supporters, and then there are those who are critics. There are those who are concerned that this will lead to more crime, and that police officers will not be protected. What do you tell those police officers who are especially concerned that they now anonymous complaints and other, I know it's a detailed bill. Is there anything in those 700 pages that maybe you might have changed? If so, what are they?
Well, you've asked several questions. I guess I'll begin by saying that this bill protects police officers. This bill codifies things that were not codified before to protect them. It also provides for funding for training, for mental health services. It provides actually more for police officers and doesn't take away from them. I am actually very confident that this is going to make policing safer, and it is going to make the public safer. And I do want to ask the Senator Sims to join me in answering the question, because I know he's, I have to say that this team of people that are standing behind me has worked really tirelessly. I want to remind you that there were months and months of committee hearings, 30 hours of testimony that were given. Many organizations, some that agree with portions of the bill but disagree with other portions of the bill, but who came to the table to offer their views, and the bill was made better as a result of that. But Senator?
Absolutely. Thank you, Governor. And the Governor's absolutely right. Nine public hearings, 30 hours of testimony, 4 months and 4 days. Let me say that again, because there's a narrative that this process was rushed. This process was not rushed. Between the beginning, the very first public hearing of the joint committees of the Senate's Criminal Law, Public Safety, and House Judiciary Criminal Committees, that the first hearing was September 1st. The first iteration of this bill was introduced January 5th. That's 126 days. So this bill was absolutely not rushed. So then the other portion of that question that you asked was that there would be this increase in crime, where you have seen other states where, particularly the pretrial fairness portion of the bill, where states have moved moved away from the utilization of cash as a measure of managing those pretrial detention decisions. There's been no market increase in crime. There is, what we are seeing is, and policy experts will tell you, what keeps down crime is the ability for individuals to be caught. And those are the things that deter crime, not more harsh sentences. So we've often said, Chairman Slaughter, Chairman Peters, and myself, that we are willing to talk to law enforcement officers, and I think you heard Chief Davis allude to this. We are willing to talk to anyone, anywhere, at any time. However, we can't talk just to ourselves, and it cannot just be a conversation where the answer is simply no. We want to have fruitful conversations with law enforcement, and we're willing to have them at any time. But to that point, the Law Enforcement Coalition put out a 15-point plan, and House Bill 3653, which is now the law of the land, includes many of those proposals that they sought. We will talk to law enforcement, and we've offered to do that, and we'll continue to do that, and we'll stand ready, willing, and able to do it.
Governor Pritzker, a number of law enforcement officers we spoke with are pleased about certain things, expanded training. There's a number of things that they agree with. One point of contention was criminal records. If you're a criminal, you have a chance of getting your record expunged. If you're a cop and you do something wrong, that lives on forever. Can you explain why you did that?
Well, I think this was a group effort. I want to make sure that we're including Representative Slaughter, who, by the way, was very involved in virtually every aspect of the bill, and so I'd ask him to step up and.
Okay. In regards to the records, but also in general, getting back to what Chairman Sims was talking about, there are a number of variety of future go live dates for all of these initiatives that actually pertain to law enforcement. With that being said, you know, this is a big omnibus bill. You just don't put the bill on the shelf and let it collect dust. You just don't, you know, switch on the switch and everything just happens. We are going to have to evolve, level set with law enforcement, talk about these issues, talk about these challenges. In regards to the records.
If you commit a crime, you have a chance of getting your record expunged. But if you're a cop and you commit a crime or something happens, the record lives on forever.
Yeah, there's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say. I think that's under the licensing aspect, Attorney General.
I know it's a big bill.
Well, it's important to note that the Supreme Court recently spoke to the issue of preservation of police records, where there was previously a 5-year cutoff, saying that there needs to be that preservation of records. So this law is consistent, is codifying the common law of the Supreme Court.
And if I may say, you know, when you talk about expunging ours, the certification, there are lots of professions that require certification here. And so the preservation of records, when considering whether someone should be allowed to remain certified for a particular profession, seems completely appropriate to me.
Governor, can I ask you a question off topic?
Sure.
COVID-19 question. Illinois right now ranks 19th in the country for first vaccinations. Meaning we rank 19th out of 50 states for getting the percentage of our population vaccinated. We rank dead last in the second vaccination column. We get 4,400 people per 100,000. Can you speak to the second vaccination issue that seems to be undercurrent here in Illinois?
Let me address both of those. First of all, we are number one among the top 10 largest states in the country in terms of first vaccinations. That is important to note because the complexities of a large state are much different than a state like South Dakota or West Virginia. So the fact that Illinois is number one as against California and New York and Texas and Florida and Georgia and so on, I think is something worthy of note, and I think that something worthy of being proud of. As you know, and I've said this before, we wanted to make sure in Phase 1A that the healthcare workers were covered completely, and we remained in Phase 1A longer than other states, for a week longer than other states, and didn't move to Phase 2 until Phase 1B rather, until we felt like we had extended that long enough so more hospital workers, more healthcare workers could get covered. The fact that we have all of those and that we're leading in terms of the first dose means that 3 to 4 weeks after those first doses are taken, people will be getting second doses. And so we're now, what do you know, in exactly that moment. In fact, you've heard some of the local health departments concerned that they're mostly getting second vaccine doses now. And there's a reason for that, and it's because now is the time, 3 to 4 weeks after we opened up Phase 1B. And that's what you're seeing now.
We're dead last in this category.
Well, but once again, we waited one extra week because we wanted to make sure and cover healthcare workers. That's the earliest category that we had, along with our long-term care facilities. And so that's why you'll see now lots of second doses. Now, we saw a small delay last week because of weather nationally in the delivery of vaccines, but you are now going to see, and I think if you talk to local health departments, they're seeing many more second doses being delivered to them than they've seen before.
Not to take away, but one more COVID.
Sure.
Will this Phase 1B expand as scheduled this week?
Yes, it is.
And do you have to prove your medical condition if you have a medical condition?
No, we're not making people walk in with papers from their doctor to prove that they have diabetes or to prove that they have cancer. We are relying on people, the honor system, for people to present themselves who have those comorbidities. We also are, obviously, the nurses and doctors that are providing those doses to people can ask them questions about their condition to confirm that. And many people are, in fact, going to their regular health provider who already has their record on file and knows their comorbidity.
Governor, one more question about the weather and the vaccines last week.
Yeah.
How badly did that set us back, and where do we stand now in getting back on track?
it set everybody nationally back. Now, as you saw from the doses that were delivered, because we put those numbers out every day, we had one day that was significantly lower, and that was on Saturday. And then Sunday, we had a much bigger Sunday than we've ever had before. And I actually think that had to do with reporting more than anything else. But we delivered a lot of vaccine into people's arms last week. We're expecting to have 500,000 doses here in the state this week for administration into people's arms. So I feel like, you know, as you've seen, we've gotten to 60, 70, 80,000 per day, and our expectation is that we'll maintain and even grow that number in the week that we're in now and the coming week after that, especially as we've opened up to 1B+.
Governor, was any part of you surprised or disheartened by how quickly and forcefully opponents of this bill, mobilized since its passage to today? I mean, you have chiefs of police, other police unions, folks who are, pro-police, some state attorneys, spreading, frankly, in some cases, vitriol. So is any
Falsehoods, yeah.
surprised or disheartened by that?
Am I disheartened by that? These folks have been out there saying some of the very same things for months and months and months. Some of them came to the table to try to negotiate their concerns, and then when they either didn't agree with the outcome that came, or that where their provisions were maybe not included in the bill, they decided, well, now we're just going to completely go against the bill and take a position, and in some cases, not tell the truth about the bill. I think that I'd like to call upon, if I may, the Attorney General to give you some feel for those opponents and where they've taken their position.
Yeah, so I've seen some of the communication to which you're referring, and I've had a lot of personal conversation with the leaders of such association, and some have expressed regret that that type of communication has been, that approach to dealing with such a comprehensive bill has been taken. As having served 14 years in the legislature, I know that there's a reason we meet from year to year, because we try to improve the law of the state of Illinois, which involves revisiting things that we may have done the previous year or in the previous part of a particular year. That's nothing new. We do that, well, the legislature does that all the time, and this is no different. It is important to note that within this legislation there are different implementation dates that allow for us to have continued conversation on this to get it right. But I can tell you, I heard from Jim Black, who's president of the Chief of Police Association, and he's expressed a willingness to work and to have conversations to correct any unintended consequences. And
Engagement with the Illinois Sheriff's Association, the executive director was concerned about that. They don't know if they could chase a suspect who just shot at someone, or what are the rules of engagement? Or is that?
Certainly you can pursue the suspect. The question is what level of use of force you utilize in doing so, which is an important conversation for us to have. That we've seen numerous incidents that not only puts the use of force as aimed towards that subject in question, but the use of force is aimed to the public at large in question. And so these are conversations we can continue to have. Again, that the legislature has embraced doing something about inadequacies in the law doesn't mean that we can't have continued conversation to address any unintended consequences, as expressed by Chief Davis, who was a participant in the many meetings that we had to deal with this. And who?
It's probably the first state to totally eliminate cash bond, and I realize it's going to be phased in.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're the first state. DC doesn't have cash bond, and New Jersey effectively got rid of cash bond in terms of very, very, very limited circumstances. But we are the first state in the country to, move in terms of the 21st century form of public safety for all, and it's rather historic. So, now, I hope the rest of the country, if they're looking at this, they can see a model that says that we can get rid of a tiered system of public safety so that, if you're poor, and especially if you're a poor person of color, you're not saddled with a really, really horrible form of public safety that means that you are guilty of being poor. So this is a historic accomplishment. And I just want to say, I know there's a lot of people who are poo-pooing and saying all these things, but let me tell you, when we look at this system, we've seen in terms of someone like, say, Kyle Rittenhouse be able to bond out and go to, a bar in Wisconsin. And then we have folks like Kevin Blumenthal, who was stuck because he was simply poor. So this is a historic achievement, and I hope the rest of the country understands that we're moving towards public safety for all in the 21st century.
On the flip side, and maybe you can qualify this, it's not cash bond for everybody. Obviously, there's for level of crime. There are those who are going to say, the person who, the victim's going to think, oh my gosh, the person's getting out tomorrow. What about that thought? That if we're the only, I know we might be first, but why are we first? Why aren't others jumping to that same conclusion?
Well, so the main thing here is it's important to remember what we've done is strengthen judicial discretion when it comes to determining whether someone is a threat to a person or community. We focused this explicitly and narrowed it so money does not play a factor. Money does not determine whether someone's a threat. We focus this specifically on whether someone is a threat to a person or community. So, and what is historic about this piece of legislation that I need to point out is it is the Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence has stated this is criminal justice reform that puts survivor safety first. I repeat that one more time. The Illinois Coalition Against Domestic Violence have said that this is criminal justice reform that puts survivor safety first. So to anybody who's a survivor of any type of abuse, whether it's at home or another space, this especially ending cash bond and pretrial, was focused on your needs. That is something that we want everybody to know.
Can you give us an example of when you would use a no cash bond? Like what kind of crime or misdemeanor, or what would it be?
It could be, retail theft is a good example, but it's someone who, since we're abolishing cash bond, in general, it's the idea of someone who's not going to be a threat to a community or to a person. So.
We've already heard from municipalities and law enforcement, police departments who claim that there's a lot of things in this bill that are essentially unfunded mandates. And there's been a decade of decreased state contributions to the local government contribution fund that goes back to municipalities. So I don't know. What do you think? A, that's a valid criticism, and B, what do you suggest that these municipalities do to move around their budgets to comply with this?
We included a number of provisions in the budget to, in fact, cover some of the costs that are associated with this bill. And I know that Representative Slaughter, Senator Sims, and I, and others will be working on making sure that we're addressing precisely that. We want to make sure that our police departments are able to implement this and have the funds that are necessary to do so. And, that they're following the rules that are being set out by this new legislation.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Good job. Good job. Thank you.